Now here is one of the top secrets in chess. It might sound familiar, but trust me, you have never seen the ideas that I have prepared for you in today's video. It's all about the center, and this is what I mean. If you can manage to advance your two center pawns as highlighted, boy, I can tell you what, you'll be winning most of your games, and I'm not even joking. And if you don't manage to advance both of your center pawns, in this case which is the D pawn and the E pawn, I will teach you how to control those empty center squares with your other minor pieces such as your knights and bishops. So here's the thing, it doesn't matter how we develop these pawns, but at best we want our E pawn to sit on E5 someday. If that doesn't work, leaving it on E4 is okay, while the D pawn will be sitting on D4 most of the times, supporting for the upcoming pawn to E5 given a chance. Once you achieve this setup, you'll find that you'll never be stuck in the middle game, because whatever you will do with your other pieces, you will just be playing to strengthen either your D pawn or your E pawn, and that's it. So opening number one, in the Caro-Kann defense, let's say you're having white pieces, you go pawn to E4, then your opponent plays pawn to C6. So the most recommended Caro-Kann variation, even in many books, is the advanced variation, where you just take up all the center like this. Look how sweet that looks. Yes, some may say these pawns are overextended, and that comes with its own shortfalls, but everything on earth has its merits and demerits. So in this case, we are looking at the lesser evil. Simple chess, they play bishop f5. You can trade off your bishops if you want, or try to be aggressive with pawn to h4. Because our center is locked, it's okay to play sideline moves, and this may come with a little trap if black carelessly plays pawn to e6, where you just trap your opponent's light squared bishop like this. I mean, there's nowhere where that bishop can go to. Pawn to f3 finally traps the bishop. This opens up opportunities for other sideline attacks such as this one. So after you play pawn to h4 and let's say black plays pawn to h5, you can simply go bishop d3 and just get rid of that light squared bishop as an example. And let's say after e6, well, you can connect your pawns if you want, or continue being aggressive, because the more you attack, the more you are giving your opponent more chances to blunder. Bishop e7 calls for knight to f3. So you see, you are developing your piece in a way of defending your other piece, which is very good, because now if black takes, you're going to take back with your knight. Guys, this is all possible because of these advanced pawns, and it's hard to realize this because as you can see, black doesn't even have adequate space to develop his pieces. Anyway, so my point is, given a chance, always think of advancing your pawns, connect your pawns on the center, and chess will begin playing itself. Opening number two, what about in the French defense? So you start with e4, black plays e6. While there are so many other variations that you can play, such as the two knights attack, the Alpine Gambit, the classical variation, the best you can do, ladies and gentlemen, is just to advance your pawns, and after d5 you keep on marching your pawns forward. So you see this structure once again, and this is a very good example of how to dominate with your center pawns in every game to win more games. c5 is what they play. So what do you do here? Instead of playing these, and whatever you're thinking about, just play with your pawns. I mean, make sure that your center pawns are well connected, and then you start developing all your pieces behind those center pawns. I mean, to support them. By doing so, you won't be stuck in the middle game because your focus is just on those two pawns. So knight c6, and if you want to get rid of many traps in the French defense, just go pawn to a3. Not objectively the best, but pawn to a3 comes later in the game anyways to prevent bishop b4 or knight b4. If queen b6 is played, you go knight to f3, supporting your d4 pawn. Your light squared bishop should not sit in the way of your queen and your d4 pawn. It will sit on e2, so don't worry about that. Let's say bishop d7, that's what they play. And now you go pawn to b4. Why? Because you just want to force black to take your d pawn so that you can take back with your c pawn. See what I was talking about? You still have those two powerful center pawns. And by the way, black has no attack. If they play something like a5, just a move to challenge your d pawn, advance that pawn, and this is all possible because of your well advanced two pawns. Knight a7, pawn to a4. Deal done. If bishop b4 check, you also have bishop d2 to challenge that. If they take, you take back with your b knight. What else? Queen c7, rook c1. These are all possibilities, and you develop your light squared bishop. This time you can even develop it on d3, since your d4 pawn is no longer under pressure, and you will castle short. Now, speaking of the normal advanced variation of the French defense, after c5, pawn to c3, knight c6, and the normal move knight to f3 instead of pawn to f3 immediately, then at times you're going to see your opponents trying to mess up your center pawns as soon as possible with the move pawn to f6, and you're going to see when they play that. First of all, they go queen b6 as usual, then see what I was talking about. Pawn to a3 always comes sooner or later. In the French defense, queen b6 goes together with pawn to a3. Why? Because the real pressure is not on d4. The real pressure is on b4. If you count how many pieces are targeting this square, and this is the first time you are hearing this probably, the pawn is controlling this square, the queen is eyeballing this square, the knight is eyeballing this square, and also the dark squared bishop. So 4 pieces are looking at the b4 square. So once you see queen b6, it's high time you go pawn to a3, preparing for pawn to b4 next to force this exchange. So that's the way to go, you guys. And whenever a5 comes, you know what to do. You just advance your b pawn and play pawn to f4 next. Simple. If they take, you take, just to simplify. That's all good. You still have your 2 center pawns, and it is in such positions where most black players like playing pawn to f6. For what? They just want to mess up your center pawns, trying to fight back on the center. And by the way, your light squared bishop will be sitting on e2 most of the times, so that you don't block the vision of your queen on your d pawn. So after pawn to f6, the best you can do is just to ignore that. So in this particular position, if you look at your pawn chain, the best you can do is not to take, because you're going to remain with an isolated d pawn and your center won't be as strong as before. Better let them take your e pawn so that you can replace that with your d pawn, and see, you're still controlling these highlighted squares in the absence of your d pawn, and black can't play bishop b4 check. So just think of advancing your 2 center pawns. You will play the rest of your middle game based on these pawns or the e pawn. They play knight trying to come here, or play knight g6 because that's what they do. And in this particular position, black is more likely going to play knight g6, teaming up with this other knight so that they can take your e5 pawn. So in this particular position, since you don't have a pawn on d4, you can play bishop d3 if you want. If knight g6 comes, I wouldn't mind taking that knight, honestly. And there's even a funny trap that can happen here, beginning with bishop e3, deliberately leaving your pawn on b2 hanging so that you can now go knight a4, which almost traps your enemy's queen. Maybe something like bishop b4 check may help, but you don't even have to take, allowing black to take back with his queen. Just go king f1 and the queen is completely dead. Still talking about the power of advancing your 2 center pawns, and that preferably your e pawn should sit on e5 given a chance. Opening number 3 in the Benoni defense. So this is for d4 players who usually face Benoni players. What do you do against this? You don't have to take, because black is going to remain with 2 pawns on the center. So the best you can do is just to advance your d pawn. And after something like d6, because that's what they do, you now go pawn to c4, even taking up more central space. Next will be e4. So black plays knight to f6 here, and now you can go knight c3, supporting for pawn to e4. They play pawn to g6, but you just go pawn to e4. Again, you can see your aim is just to dominate the center. You want to be first to take up the whole center, or to control the center if you can't place your pawns there. So bishop g7, you know what I like doing in this position? I like playing pawn to f4. The idea is just to go pawn to e5. It becomes easier to play when you keep on advancing your center pawns. They usually castle short, and then I like playing knight to f3 here. Now this is theory, guys. Whenever you see bishop g4, just go pawn to h3. They take the knight. This is what they do, by the way. So you take back with your queen. I'm not going to go into detail. You already know the ideas. If they go knight d7, you can play bishop d3 if you want, preparing to castle short. Let's say e6, you castle short. If they take, you take towards the center with your pawn, not your knight, so that you have 3 connected center pawns. I mean, it just becomes easier to continue playing from here, because all you are thinking of is supporting your center pawns with your minor pieces. There is one favorite line that I like in the Benoni defense, which goes as follows: d4, and instead of going pawn to c5 immediately, black plays knight to f6. Against this, I just go pawn to c4, because I can't play e4, there is a knight there. My next move is knight c3, to support pawn to e4. Black plays pawn to c5, then I just advance my d pawn, and it is in this position where Benoni players try to transpose the game into the Bengal Gambit like this, with pawn to b5. Against the Bengal Gambit, I like keeping my pawns. Still, I want to develop my knight on c3 and play pawn to e4. So what I do is going pawn to a4, trying to divert the attention. They take on c4, but this is what we call a clearance sacrifice. That pawn will die in no time. I just go knight c3, preparing for pawn to e4 next. They play d6, then pawn to e4, g6, trying to vincaro their bishop and castle short. And this is when we take that pawn. Bishop s6 was going to be a nice attempt, but that was going to be a sheer waste of time. So bishop g7. Then I talked of this move, right? Even in this position, I respect f4. After castle short, I go knight to f3. Once again, black may play bishop g4, after which I go h3 to exchange that bishop for a knight. If bishop s6 comes, taking is okay, but I want to initiate this trade on my terms. Black should take me so that I can take back with my knight, putting my knight on a better square, or even with a pawn, like bishop takes, then AB, deal done. Now next I will castle short, or maybe play pawn to e5 given a chance. Next opening. This again is for d4 players. How can you control your center with two of your center pawns? You start with d4 first, and let's say black goes for the Indian defense. You continue playing c4, because you want to go knight c3 to support pawn to e4 next. So they go pawn to e6, getting ready for this trade after knight c3. Boom. So even after seeing this, I like playing knight c3 anyways, because I still want to play pawn to e4 if black doesn't play bishop b4. If bishop b4 is played, well, I just go queen c2 so that I can take back with my queen if I want to. Queen c2 again prepares for pawn to e4. So see what we are doing. In fact, I wouldn't mind taking back with my b pawn. Why? Because I still want to go pawn to e4. Very important stuff. If pawn to d5, stopping pawn to e4, I just simplify the game like this. After ed, then bishop a3, just to slow down black's development, because they can't castle through check. Still there's tension on e4, by the way. This is all we are playing for. If something like knight c6 is played with an intention to go knight e7, then castle short, here you can even play pawn to f3. It is acceptable because the idea is very simple. You still want to maintain your two center pawns. So after knight e7, you can simply go pawn to e4, wanting to go e5 next. If pawn takes, you take back with your f pawn. You have an open f file for your king's rook after you castle short. Let's say they castle short, knight is pinned to the rook. You go bishop d3 supporting your e pawn. After all, you have e5 in the near future. Rook e8, you go knight e2, knight g6, and castle short. So even in the d4 opening, there's a way you can play your cards to remain with two center pawns like this. Last one, against the Pirc defense, how can you control the center with your two center pawns in order to make your middle game easy to play? Well, like always, you start with e4, going back to e4 players. After d6, the Pirc defense, the best you can do once again is just to dominate the whole center with your center pawns. I'm talking about the 150 attack, you guys. They play knight f6, you simply go knight c3. After g6, you simply go knight to f3. You still have your two powerful center pawns. If bishop g7, you go bishop e3. You can start with any bishop, there are no rules to that, but developing your queen side pieces prepares you to castle long immediately and start attacking from the king side, since you know black castle short most of the times in the Pirc defense. So you go queen d2, preparing to castle long. They play a6, trying to advance. Now you go bishop d3. So you can see all you are doing is supporting your two center pawns with your minor pieces. It becomes easier to play chess like this, you guys, rather than making sideline moves in an effort to checkmate your opponent very quickly. b5, you go bishop h6. Simple stuff to trade off this. If b4, you still have knight e2. Now this is under attack. This is played. You go bishop takes. After king takes, immediately you start expanding your pawns. h4. Next you want to play h5. If h5 is played, you go knight g5. In this position, it is very safe to say white has more central space and black's position is a little bit passive because of this. So all you are doing once again is just controlling the center with your two center pawns. You lose most of your games because you don't respect this. You want to play like Magnus or Hikaru, using other sideline moves, b5 stuff, g4. The thing is, as a beginner or an intermediate level player, the best you can do is to play simple chess that you can easily understand. Right, you guys, let me know what you think about this principle of advancing your center pawns as quickly as possible. Remember to hit the like button, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and share this video if you can. Until next time, bye bye.